Hello and welcome to In Conversation With, the podcast series brought to you by the team behind the Global Cosmetics newsfeed. Today, we're turning our attention to the global hair care market, a category that continues to evolve at pace. Valued at around $110 billion in 2025, the market is projected to reach $151 billion by 2030. Driven by changing consumer expectations, scientific innovations, and increasing regulatory and environmental pressures. As we move into 2026, hair care sits at the intersection of several powerful forces. Tighter global regulations, raising demand for transparency, economic uncertainty, supply chain disruption, and shifting retail dynamics are all reshaping how products are formulated, sourced, positioned, and sold. At the same time, consumers are placing greater emphasis on scalp hair, barrier protection, ingredient integrity, and sustainability, pushing brands to rethink what performance really means in this category. In today's episode, we're exploring what's fueling innovation in hair care, the challenges and the opportunities facing the industry, and where the category is heading next. To help me unpack this, I am delighted to be joined by an expert panel representing consumer insights, ingredient innovation, and brand strategy. Hello, and welcome back to Mallory Huron, Director of Beauty and Wellness at Future Snoops, Jennifer O'Hara, Director of Marketing and Commercialisation at Inolex, and Patricia de Moraes, Senior Director of Consumer Market Insights at Not Your Mother's Hair Care. Thank you all for joining me today. Let's start with consumers, because expectations around hair care are changing rapidly, from scalp-first routines and protective styling to sustainability, efficacy, and value. Mallory, from Future Snoop's perspective, what key consumer trends are shaping the hair care category as we move into 2026, and what challenges and opportunities do these shifts create for the industry?
So I think you got us off to a good start mentioning some of the ones that we're definitely seeing as continuing to be really strong in 2026, namely this idea of scalp care, hair length, hair retention, and hair growth. There has been a full-on cultural obsession that is largely coming from TikTok. Of course, you can't talk about hair trends, scalp care, and hair growth without talking about the Abby Young method, which I'm sure everyone on this call is familiar with. She's a very famous TikTok influencer, and she devised this method, basically just a lineup of products that she likes, essentially, that are optimized to improve the health of your hair. And she's had a lot of very interesting partnerships with some big hair care brands as a result of the popularity of this method. She's just a consumer herself, and so it's just interesting to see how her insights are now being treated as expertise, but she has a lot of traction and it's gained a huge cult following. And I think it's resonating with consumers because, especially if we look at the broader picture, we look in times of financial anxiety and instability, hair care and extensive hair routines is one of the first things to go in terms of like in salon appointments. We do still tend to see quite a bit of DIY consumer education. In addition to that, we also see this emphasis on hair health. And I think the two are more than tangentially related, that when you might have to go a little longer between appointments, the health and vitality of your hair becomes more paramount to make sure that it's in good condition. This is the big trend we're seeing across topical skincare and also internal wellness, and hair care is no exception for this. There's been a huge focus on how do we holistically prevent gray hair? How do we, through product and also supplements, there's so many hair care brands that now have this. I think Array is the name of the one I'm thinking of that has a supplement to supposedly prevent grays and also top the system as well. But it's all from this desire for skinification. We're seeing ingredients like glycolic acid, exfoliating acids, vitamin C show up in hair care that we never saw 10 years ago. And so it's this need to have this skincare spa-like attention to the scalp, attention to the hair. A lot of this is also, of course, coming from Korea, and a lot of the K-beauty trends we see for hair. We're seeing quite a bit of traction with consumer interest in K-beauty hair care. We're shifting outside of just skincare, moving into hair care. And so I think the obsession with hair health, it's taken on a new life through TikTok and through all these many multi-product trends now, but it really is speaking to a cultural trend that's been present for thousands of years, since time immemorial. You can see the thousands-year-long example of long, lustrous, healthy hair as an indicator of overall health and well-being, and that absolutely nothing has changed in that regards in terms of what consumers are looking for. And so I think now, and also the last thing I'll say to this is, I think from a consumer mentality perspective, the investing in the ritual of these hair trends, it feels quite pampering and spa-like. We continue to see consumers investing in very elaborate trends. And yes, it's speaking to a bit of a FOMO, a cultural FOMO, wanting to see if it will work for you, wanting to try these products. But it's also speaking to this idea of ritual, routine, self-care, wellness, self-love, trying to romanticize the everyday experience and create a spa-like experience at home for oneself. So a lot of factors, but it's all fueling a massive market growth for this category.
And Jennifer, how are these evolving consumer expectations influencing ingredient development and formulation priorities from a supplier standpoint?
I always start from home, right? Where I have a Gen A and Gen Z daughters who are following TikTok. They have better hair care products than I do, with my money, I might add. But they're looking for products that promise healthier, shiny hair that help them both achieve curls on some days and straighten hair other days. And I think it's interesting that Mallory mentions the longer, lustrous hair, because that's something I see at home and something we're hearing from our customers. So to feed the market from Gen A and Gen Z and all the letters in between, on the ingredient development side, we're taking our nourishing inside out ingredients and we're exploring what benefits they can do for the overall trends and to offer multifunctionality for smoothing, shine, scalp health. And we're looking at heat protection as well.
And Patricia, from a brand owner's perspective, how are these consumer trends impacting new product development and portfolio strategy?
Definitely. So we are in touch with the Gen Z consumers, with our consumer targets all the time. And what we hear consistently from our consumers is that their expectations, so they have very high expectations, high standards. And the first thing that they do want to ensure that the products that we developed is delivery is on performance. So in transparency on what we are claiming. So the product should perform well and should deliver on what it promises, and also to be affordable. So they do not, with the amount of information that they have, so they are aware that they do not need to overpay to get results. And what makes them loyal to a product or repeat on a brand, it's really like consistency. So quality and consistency on what that promises. As Jennifer and Mallory, they mentioned, so we are always tracking the same trends, right? And there is a consistency on this hair health as an indicator of the overall health. This is something that the Gen Z consumers that when we speak about with them, so they speak a lot about the wellness, the need of wellness, and also how much they focused on their wellness routines and being hair part of that. And as they are feeling well, so they do relate that their whole body and including their hair will be good as well. So again, they do understand that connection between the well-being and translating to the body and hair, and the hair as an expression of their overall health.
And technology is playing an increasingly central role in hair care innovation, from ingredient science and delivery systems to diagnostics and performance testing. Mallory, what technological advancements is Future Snoops tracking in hair care, and how are they shaping the opportunities and challenging facing this category in 2026?
I think just building off the consumer trends, in terms of technological trends, we've seen quite a bit of interesting biotechnology advances with hair care, particularly as a category. Obviously, skincare, topical skincare is a really interesting area to track as well. But hair care has been some of the biggest, most intriguing headlines, mainly in terms of the whole peptide and bond repair conversation. And I'm sure Jennifer will speak more to this in a moment. But I think it's been interesting to see in terms of how we approach hair care is changing very rapidly as this skinification movement of hair care is happening real time. It's causing ingredient innovation to really rethink how we approach hair health and hair strength, as well as hair retention. Delivery systems is also a key one, as you mentioned, because with hair, you're dealing with sort of two fronts. You have the scalp and also the length of the hair itself. So it presents quite a technical challenge to formulators in terms of especially all-in-one products, like all over heat protectants, your traditional shampoo and conditioner formats, how to support both scalp and hair health. So definitely ingredient innovation has been a main attention grabber for hair care brands recently, but it's mainly been centering around that bond repair, protein, peptide conversation. We're also seeing a interesting shift towards hair plumping. This is also coming out of Korea as well. The idea of, can we volumize hair without damaging it, without artificially inflating it with products? Is there a sort of a thickening agent that can boost hair without damaging it? So I think, especially as consumers become more educated about how and why hair care products work, which of course we know they are because of knowledge sharing over social media, they're becoming the new experts. So really, there's no screen to hide behind when it comes to bad formulation technology. So I think it's really challenging brands, but in a good way, to really create ingredients that are going to make formulations and products more optimized, more seamless, easy to use. And I think hopefully what we're going to see as an opportunity going forward are some interesting formulas and ingredients that cut down on the number of steps needed for this lustrous, long, shiny hair. That's the ideal right now.
And Jennifer, how is technology influencing ingredient innovation, particularly in areas like biodegradability, multifunctionality, and performance?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting what Mallory said about the skinification and the biotechnology. So at Inolex, we're looking at it from the sensory and skinification are matched, and we're looking to create some new ingredients that can even help deliver the biotechnology, but it's important that it delivers and that the chassis itself is non-irritating, sensory pleasing, and multifunctional. And I like that idea of the hair pumping concept. I think that's unique, and I'm going to brainstorm with my R&D team, but I could think of some ingredients that can provide the plumping kind of effect and give that sensory, but then we can balance it without where it wouldn't damage the hair, but then it also won't cause buildup. So I want to explore that a little bit further with my R&D. But where we're looking at the innovation is we are building a robust pipeline of new concepts and ingredients, and we are looking at the chassis performance, and we're looking at delivery systems as well. And to accelerate the innovation, we're using more innovation, which is we're looking at AI tools as well to help with our ingredient development and our concept development. But we're leveraging that with proactive collaboration because I think technology is very important and AI is something that we all need to learn to use and to facilitate our development process. But you can't get rid of the creativity of people. It's not going to replace that. And so we're balancing it. We're using high tech technology either through our testing, but then we're balancing it with low tech people listening. And an example of that is that we're currently collaborating with a textured hair expert, and we're visiting her salon. We're trying out products, but we're really listening to the consumers and the stylists and hearing what they really need. So we're balancing the people to people interaction in the salon and working with some of our external network. And we're getting salon images, we're talking, we're figuring out what we need to develop next. And we're creating some videos and just understanding more about the textured hair market. But we're balancing that with in-lab studies. So we're going to show quantitative results of smoothness and curl retention. And then in the future, we're going to go even more high tech and we're going to look at AI and figure out how we can explore new ingredients that can be created or modified to really target whatever those hair care needs are that we learn from some of these people-to-people discussions, if that makes any sense.
Indeed, I think a future Snoops tagline this year is human inspiration meets AI precision, Mallory. I have it in front of my eyes as we speak. And Patricia, how are brands leveraging new technologies to improve efficacy, differentiation, and consumer trust in hair care products?
That is a good question because what we hear from consumers is that their primary source of information and where they get inspiration is, social media through TikTok, but also like peer-to-peer recommendation, right? So in their closest community, like friends, the family, the old sibling, the cousins, so is where they get most of the recommendation. But the way is they are leveraging technology as well is to help them on personalization. And this is a way that we are looking as well. So how we leverage technology to help them to personalize their routine. So even though they get recommendations and inspiration and they read through reviews, but they do understand that each hair is a different hair and they do want to be experts on their own hair. So they do want to keep customizing and personalizing their routine. And we do know that personalization is something that will continue to drive growth. The other way that we can look at this is how we leverage technology and then all the impact of this on ingredients, on forms, and in innovation on how to make consumers like pay more to get that product with that technology. And overall, what we see is consumers are still in the process of getting more comfortable with following like AI recommendation. So I think that the way as brands should be looking at this is how we leverage all the technology for enhanced personalization, but still provide that level of trust that consumers need before to follow that AI recommendation, for example.
And thinking about trust, environmental pressures continue to act as a major accelerator across hair care. From water usage and packaging waste to ingredient sourcing and life cycle impact. Mallory, what environmental pressures are most influencing hair care innovation right now, and how are they shaping the industry's priorities for 2026?
I think back on some previous editions of this podcast when we've revisited the topic of sustainable hair care and circular hair care. And I think a lot of the same conversations are still evolving, especially in terms of what the consumer lifestyle is willing to adapt to. There are formulations and indie disruptors have really shown a strong case that, yes, there are amazing options for concentrated formulas in aluminum, smaller aluminum packaging. Yes, there are now amazing solid hair care brands that are amazing, not like 20 years ago when the technology was not so good, but now it really is great. So it's not that there aren't better options in terms of water saving on shipping costs and all that. I think there's still this huge barrier in terms of consumer lifestyle, still a huge association between these big bottles of shampoo, conditioner, and styling products in terms of just value and familiarity. So I think that is a huge hurdle to get over, but I think it is happening. I see it happening very slowly, but it is happening real time. But I think in terms of a sustainable perspective, I think this is a major opportunity for brands to slowly introduce products into their existing lineup that are going to help move the needle just a little bit towards a more sustainable space. And of course, there's so much happening in terms of the sustainable part of the biotechnology conversation. I know we brought up biotech a moment ago, but in terms of synthetic lab-based alternatives to depleted natural ingredients and how we can create better ingredients in the lab so that we don't have to plunder nature anymore. I think that is still very much a central point of sustainable hair care, especially as ingredient heroism continues to be the selling point, not just within hair care, but across beauty. So I think having hero ingredients that are sustainable and functional as well, that serve that marketing purpose of catching the consumer's eye and their attention, but is also working for the consumer's hair and also the environment, I think is key. So it's just interesting because I've been a big proponent of solid hair care and concentrated formulas for a while, but it's slowly but surely catching on. So interested to see where it goes.
And Jennifer, how are these environmental considerations affecting ingredients selection, development, and supplier partnerships?
So I work closely with R&D and sustainability, and they're in the office with me. And every time we start any initiative, investment, any innovation project, we start with the question of what is the impact we're driving for the people, the planet, and for our business? We need to answer it for all three of those. So we're continuing to design safe, readily biodegradable ingredients, and we're investing in efficiency improvements. So we're looking at it across our supply chain and making sure that we're driving better solutions overall. But we still see a need for diverse feedstocks. And I think last year we were driving down, okay, let's just talk about specific feedstocks. But now I see it that we need to be diverse overall. You can't just focus on one feedstock. It has to be diverse, and we have to get transparency. So we're going to continue to invest in responsible sourcing. And personally, I believe the future depends on what we all do now as an industry. So it's important for all of us to understand how our products are going to impact consumers during use, like that concentrate idea, and also how they're going to impact the earth and waterways after use. And an example, actually, we're working right now on a sustainable product type that's going to benefit the market and the earth would be to create a lower carbon footprint shampoo and conditioner, like the concentrate idea we've been talking about. So Inolex is almost done creating a shampoo and conditioner concentrates with better ingredients. And what's funny is that this has been a passion project of mine since I learned about this idea of a concentrate in an earlier GCN hair care podcast. But whenever I talk to my sales team about it, and they're the ones who are talking to the makers of cosmetics, they see that their customers aren't asking for this yet. So I think there's still some education that we need to do even within the personal care market about this idea. But as soon as I get some samples of these prototypes, which we're very close to, I'm going to make sure I send it to you guys so we can test it out and let's get some education in the market about creating these lower carbon footprint technologies in hair care.
Should be interesting. And Patricia, how are the brands balancing environmental responsibilities with performance and commercial realities in the hair care category MPD?
So something that is important for us to consider when we speak about, especially with the younger generations, about sustainability, is that they don't see it as like a differentiator anymore. So for them, sustainability is just like the baseline expectation. So a brand, for example, that is not delivering like the minimal, that has a recyclable packaging, that is cruelty-free, that has the basics on sustainability, for them is just out of their consideration. So again, when we go back to the decision hierarchy that I mentioned, so many times we don't see sustainability at the top of the hierarchy on their consideration. And that was something that caught our attention in the beginning. And as we speak to them, it's just because they will speak about the efficacy, they will speak about the affordability first, but it's not because sustainability is not as important. It's just because it is there. So they don't mention that this is the top factor on the decision hierarchy, but it's just because if it is not there, that product or that brand would not even be part of the consideration set. With that said, so it's something that we've been discussing internally is, okay, there are things that we take for granted that our brand does. So in terms of the ingredients, where we source them, or even the cruelty-free, this is something that we need to over communicate with consumers, or is the key reason behind the brand choice. Not necessarily, but absolutely. So we need to continue reinforcing through packaging, and we need to continue reinforcing that our innovation moving forward. So we will absolutely deliver on that and something else, because their expectations around sustainability as well is just continue growing, right? So this is most of what we catch from consumers on this area, and we are acting against.
Interesting. And alongside consumer and environmental forces, the regulatory and market landscape is becoming more complex, particularly around sustainable claims, ingredient safety, and global compliance. Mallory, what market and regulatory shifts is Future Snoops tracking in hair care, and what do they mean for brands heading into 2026?
I think there are two main things I'd like to touch on for this. One is a continuing conversation around the safety of certain in-salon products, especially for BIPOC women, textured hair. We've seen a lot of regulations and laws put into place quite recently to address the conversation of really harmful chemicals being utilized mainly in salons towards particular populations. And again, with increased transparency and calls for action, we've seen some really good movement on that. But especially in the US, we could definitely see some broader regulations put in play. However, I think in terms of sustainable claims, obviously the US is still quite the Wild West when it comes to marketing claims, both in terms of sustainability, obviously green, organic, clean. These don't have, by and large, a legal backing to them in this market, but I remain hopeful that at some point in the future, this will see a shift, especially in terms of how hair care and how cosmetics and personal care in general is treated in the U.S. market. But just more specifically looking at hair care and regulatory shifts, I think tightening down on marketing language is going to be something that we see, especially with the hair growth category. So with this category of scalp care, hair growth, hair length, hair retention gaining so much traction and consumer zeal, I think we're going to see, especially across Europe and markets where there's more stringent marketing rules, I think we're going to see a tighter hold on some claims, especially for hair growth. So I'm interested to see how that is going to evolve, particularly moving forward.
And Jennifer, how are regulatory changes influencing ingredients innovation and compliance strategies?
Luckily, I think this ties in with the theme of this podcast, which is predicted, protective, planet positive hair care. And so I've been fortunate where Inolex predicted the need for planet positive hair care. We currently have projects in place for protective hair care, and we see the market continuing to look for alternatives for silicones, phenoxyethanol, and now quaternions due to some of the forthcoming or possible regulations or concerns that are evolving. So this has been a great opportunity for us because we provide silicone, phenoxyethanol, and quat alternatives. And they also happen to meet the safety and sustainability standards, but they also have the multifunctional performance, and we know performance is king, and they have nice sensory. So we're now in a very fortunate situation where we've been ahead of the regulations, and we are going to continue to do so that we have the alternatives in place. But now we want to go an extra step and get even better performance out of it.
Indeed. And Patricia, how are the brands navigating these regulatory and market pressures while maintaining speed to market and consumer relevance?
I agree with Jennifer just said. So is the need of being always ahead of the regulatory changes and having plan A or plan A, B, and C in place and not being like late to the party. So we need to be always ahead because the way as we see consumers now, again, they are educated on everything and especially on ingredients as well. So also when a situation or when an ingredient is banned, for example, so that subject may get an explosion or get viral on social media very quickly. And we need to be prepared on that because that can definitely destroy a product image or even a brand image, brand equity, if that happens, right? So the other thing that we've seen definitely is, again, as consumers are more educated, we've seen consumers increasingly proactively asking us about ingredients. So through our customer care channels, so consumers and very young consumers requesting more information or explanation or about the specific ingredients, which means that again, even if they don't have the entire context, if they don't have the entire knowledge, so at least something they know about that ingredient, and probably they learn about this through their social media channels. Another thing is also consumers are more and more educated about allergies, about sensitivity as well. So not only ingredients, but also about those other areas. And that's why they knowing more about the ingredients that they are putting in their body. Even as I mentioned, sometimes they don't have the entire context, but they just know, let's say, they just assume that all alcohols are bad for your hair, right? And they just assume this. And this is the type of things that our communication channels, right? So all the touch points that we can serve consumers, we can help clarify those questions. We have the enough and the right information to provide to consumers.
Yeah, interesting to be ahead of the curve. And to close, I'd like to look ahead to what's next for this category. Mallory, what are your top 3 hair care predictions for 2026?
Top 3, well, I think the first one would be wellness integrated. And I want to, of course, give a shout out to Patricia and the new Aura Boost collection by Not Your Mother's, because that's one that speaks really well to what I'm envisioning here, where you have products that have tailored efficacious ingredients, but also have very much that wellness, healing, ritualistic component to it. So I quite like that launch because it really touches on a lot of main consumer trends we're seeing. I also think that, as I mentioned at the top of this podcast, there's a big need for products, for multitasking products, especially within hair care. We're seeing, especially with these viral hair care routines as they grow, one of the biggest, most prominent criticisms has been the number of products that consumers are required to purchase in order to so complete the routine. So I think we've seen a lot within skincare, multitasking and skincare makeup hybrid products. I think now is the time for hair care to move into that multitasking space and leave the old 2-in-1 shampoos and conditioners in the dust. And I think lastly, my third one would be definitely moving the needle in terms of consumer education, lifestyle, and innovation to get them to adopt these waterless, concentrated, solid hair care products that are going to, yes, sustainability, as Patricia mentioned before, is expected to be baked into every brand. Going forward, we know that, of course. However, I think we can get consumers on board with a few lifestyle changes in hair care for some more sustainable formats and not just ingredients. That would be a game changer.
And Jennifer, what developments do you believe will influence ingredient innovation in hair care next year?
Inolex has some new concept launches in 2026 that are based on my predictions for 2026. So I hope they're correct. We're looking at from the benefit standpoint because we want to provide multi-benefit solutions as well. So we think that the 3 hair care benefits that are going to dominate in 2026 are bouncy, smooth, and fragrant. So we're building some technologies in that space.
And Patricia, from a brand's perspective, What do you see as the biggest opportunities and potential risks for hair care in 2026?
Not trying to speak about the same, but I do feel that the wellness, it's not a new trend. So we've seen this, but this is not going to stop anywhere soon. So the hair care as an emotional well-being will continue growing. All the sensorial moments through the functional sense, fostering that emotional connection through hair care, through their hair care products, their scents. So I think that this will continue to be big. I would say it's not as a risk, but it's still an opportunity for brands is that still consumers, they like the idea. So they really appreciate the idea of functional sense, for example. But what we've learned is that they still need some type of hard claims, data points to really help them, to educate them on how this really can change your mood, how this really can impact your day from changing your energy, changing your mood perspective. So I think that, again, it's a big area. So there is still room to continue growing, but there is something that brands need to continue providing to consumers education and more reassurance on how it's not just a marketing claim, but it's really, this really works, right? So consumers are expecting this. And the other one I would say, which is related to the hair health that we discussed in the beginning, is we can just not stop talking about the rise of the GLP-1 across the globe and all the impact of that. So we know that for hair care specifically, there is a huge opportunity, and not only in terms the products, the topical products, but also the vitamins and supplements as well. But this is something that I think will continue driving the industry. And again, speaking about this is really that connection between the hair care, so the inside out, right? So I think that we are talking about GLP-1, we are talking about aging, but if we think about through the entire consumer life, so there are multiple life moments, life stages that hair may be impacted. And I think that this is a huge opportunity for hair care brands to continue understanding this. And there are brands that will not absolutely focused on aging, but absolutely there are other life stages that we can continue developing that idea of inside out.
Indeed, we can. And with that, I would like to wrap up today's episode of Predictive, Protective, Plant Positive Trends in Hair Care 2026. A huge thank you to Mallory, Jennifer, Patricia for sharing their insights, and to you for listening. As we heard today, hair care in 2026 will be defined by smarter science, stronger protection, and a growing commitment to sustainability, all while meeting increasingly sophisticated consumer expectations. We'll be back next month with more insights as we continue to explore the trends shaping the future of cosmetics and personal care industry. Until then, take care, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next episode.